Hey, I'm Ruji, and today we're joined with
Jennifer Zee.
And I'm Ruji. Welcome to the Vegan Ambition podcast number 8. Today's main question is, what do you think is a good trigger to help people come into a vegan lifestyle? But before we start, I'd like to thank today's sponsors. I'd like to thank celery, cumin, and of course, corn. CCC today. This podcast is a tool to help vegans, vegetarians, and anyone else who's interested in the vegan lifestyle. On this podcast, we'll be having different guests every week, and we're going to discuss a topic on veganism, and we will debate different viewpoints. The Vegan Ambition is a no-pressure zone and a no-hostility zone. We don't pressure our guests, but are simply here to discuss different viewpoints. I hope you'll join us on this journey, and education is our biggest goal here. If you don't know me already, I'm Ruji. I've been vegan for over a year now. I'm not a perfect vegan, but I'm trying to become one, if there is such a thing. Hopefully you can join me on this journey of veganism and learn something new in the process. And this is Jennifer. You're the owner of Plant-Based and Happy, a company that helps people to move to a plant-based diet. Why don't you tell me more about yourself and your company?
So I discovered the plant-based lifestyle after my diagnosis of endometriosis. And I decided that instead of going on synthetic hormones and taking, a lot of different types of medications to only mask the symptoms, not actually get rid of the endometriosis, that I would try, since it was an inflammatory disease, I would actually try to mask the symptoms, so to speak, with an anti-inflammatory diet, which is a whole food plant-based diet.
Okay. So you're a whole food plant-based. So you don't eat any processed foods or
Correct.
anything. Okay, so we're gonna skip the food test today. I wasn't sure, but it's good to know. So can you tell me more about like what you kind of eat on a regular basis and how that kind of goes?
So I eat very similar to a vegan diet, except for I cut refined sugars. So coconut sugar, I definitely don't consume, and gluten. So I'm gluten-free as well.
Okay.
Because that causes inflammation for people who are suffering from endometriosis. So wanting to reduce the inflammation would generally cut out all of those inflammatory foods.
Okay. And kind of how long has your transition been to veganism and stuff?
So my transition started over a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So sort of like yours. And mine actually happened overnight because I was so fearful of the painful symptoms that accompany endometriosis. I didn't want to end up in the hospital anymore. And it was more of a test. It wasn't, I set the bar low. I gave it 30 days to see if it was actually going to impact my life, my symptoms, and it ended up impacting my entire life. So
in a good way.
In all spectrums, I mean, from I'm an avid CrossFitter, so people in the CrossFit gym were like, well, wait a minute, because they're mostly paleo, which incorporates some meat. And they're like, well, wait a minute, how are you going to have the energy, sustainability, build muscle, strength, conditioning? And I've been hitting personal records since going plant-based all over the board.
Okay, cool.
So that has definitely impacted my fitness levels in a positive way.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I'm just curious, for your company, you're helping people transition. So what does that kind of entail? How does that go?
So I'm helping people who are coming from all walks of life, primarily people who are high performers. They have control of their work life, but they're missing this piece, and this piece is, having better focus through plant-based nutrition, sleeping better. So they're missing those benefits on a traditional diet. And so I help people who are, say, having health issues like I had, people who want better skin, people who want more energy, athletes, CrossFitters. I'm helping those types of people just outperform their performance, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, and you found results with doing that for people.
Right. So, you know, the main issue with, especially if you're talking to someone who is in strength and conditioning fitness, they are worried about losing muscle mass. They're worried about losing energy and endurance. And I've met a good handful of people who are willing to let me sort of steer them in a different direction. Increase their personal records, which means, for instance, I went from 115-pound deadlift to 150-pound deadlift.
Wow.
So, me being the example, people in my gym started noticing that, and then I was able to help them, and they're noticing, better moods, balanced. Women especially are noticing, more glowing skin, waking up less foggy, and just being able to focus on things that matter in your life. Work, having a higher rate of, just being able to be more productive and being more focused throughout the workday has really been like a couple of big benefits that I've noticed from people who I've been helping.
Great. So I'm curious as well, kind of, there a lot when people hear that you're on a vegan diet, they already get scared, like,
Right.
This is so difficult. Then they hear you're on a whole food diet, they're like, oh my god.
It's even worse.
Then they hear you're on a sugar-free, how do you do it, kind of?
So I have to say, I cut out refined sugars, but I still consume natural sugars.
Right.
So the sustainability of my diet is basically, my motivation is more the momentum that I have going right now. I have this energy, and I do notice if I do incorporate something that may not be as healthy, maybe a little more processed, I do notice either that day or the next day that I'm a little more groggy, and I don't like to feel that way. But in terms of say refined sugars, I've replaced a lot of because I love to bake, so I've replaced a lot of refined sugars with like dates and natural, like organic maple syrup and stuff like that. And it tastes and sweet potatoes, so it honestly tastes just like what a regular. So for instance, like my sweet potato brownie tastes like a brownie.
Really?
So I don't feel like I'm missing anything.
Yeah.
At first I felt like I was missing a little bit because I made the transition so drastically.
Right.
And that's another reason why I'm helping other people transition to a plant-based diet, because I made a lot of mistakes. So I've kind of worked out those kinks.
I'm still making mistakes.
Yes. So I've worked out those kinks to be able to help people not go through, those moments of hanger like I had to. So it's just an easier, smoother transition for them.
Okay. Now, do you mind kind of taking me through like what you do for them, just like as like a brief overview or something like that?
Yeah. So
just,
first, it's establishing what their goals are.
Okay.
That could be weight loss. That could be, someone, for instance, who suffers from symptoms from endometriosis. They want to try and reduce their symptoms. Somebody who wants better skin, more energy, wants to, perform better in the gym or at work. Discussing that goal with them will sort of pinpoint the direction that we're going to take. Right. And then after that, we go into, there's like an extensive background where, we really dive into their lifestyle and how they live. So, now I know their motivation. I want to also know how to incorporate that goal into the way they're living without disrupting their whole entire life. Okay. If they have a family, if they work 15 hours in a day, like I need to know those things to sort of customize how we're going to plan this out. And then after that, knowing the lifestyle, knowing their goal, we're going to go in and basically develop a plan. I'm providing meal plans and recipes, and there's a kitchen assessment portion of it where we're going to actually go into the person's kitchen, see what they have, swap this for that.
Yeah.
And then there a piece of that is a food diary. So
Okay.
what have you been eating for the last let's say month?
All right.
Let's analyze that. Let me explain to you why 4 cans of Coke is probably not good at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
Let me explain to you why, when you decided to switch your milk in your coffee for cream rather than, say, like unsweetened almond milk, why? Because some people just don't know, right? So, why is that something that you're,
that you'll feel later.
You're gonna feel later, and it's worse than what you were doing. What the alternative would be, and educating people on what they should be eating and why they should be eating it and when they should be eating it. So that's like a small piece of the beginning stages of working with Jennifer Zee.
That's awesome. I mean, I know for me, if I had something like that, that would have made my life a lot easier because I had so much difficulty going through the whole transition overall.
Right. Did you have support?
I had support for veganism. I did not have any support because I went pescatarian and then vegetarian. I had no support for those two.
Yeah.
So that was like very, very tough. It was very much a learning curve.
Yes.
And at the very beginning, I was like, I'm just gonna stop eating these things. And I have no idea what else I'm gonna eat, but I'm just gonna not eat those things.
Right, because that's naturally what people would do, right?
Yeah.
So you're going, and that's what I did. I cut out the foods that I knew were highly inflammatory, and I had nothing to replace them with.
Yeah.
So I didn't eat.
Yeah.
And you can't sustain that, especially when I worked out and, I had this busy schedule. So I quickly found ways to sort of replace those types of food, that type of food, and little tricks that sort of come along with, like food prep is huge.
Yeah.
Batch cooking is huge. I make freezer bags full of the ingredients that I'm going to put in different smoothies. So I have different ingredients bags. So I'll have like tropical smoothie. I'll have like chocolate smoothie, banana smoothie.
You must have a massive freezer.
I have a massive freezer and a Vitamix, which is key.
Those are
key.
Yeah.
To any plant-based diet. And then, so you're not eating the same thing every day. Mm-hmm. And I have to say that our meals, in particular dinner, our meals are much more exciting and fun and delicious than they were pre-plant-based transition, because we were eating the same thing every night.
Yeah. So, can you give me an example, just so people...
Of what we were eating or what we're eating now?
Both.
So we used to eat lean chicken breasts, maybe a sweet potato, what else? Salmon, and whatever type of veggie I could. We ate fairly clean, but not in the terms of clean. I was way off.
Yeah.
And for instance, now I make these power bowls. So we have like chickpeas, brown rice, sweet potatoes. So
much more variety is what I see.
Colorful bowls.
Okay.
I tried frittatas the other night and made veggie frittatas, and they were delicious just as an appetizer. Yeah. The one key thing is I order a produce basket from Mama Earth Organics.
Right. Yeah.
And you're able to customize the basket when you before you get it, and I choose not to, because there may be things like produce items in the basket that I may not know what they are, essentially, but then it gives me the opportunity to do some research and find some recipes and make something new that I may never have tried in the past.
And for those who don't know, Mama Earth, they basically deliver once a week.
Correct.
To your house, fresh fruits and veggies, and then
locally sourced.
Or they try to be as locally as possible.
As much as they can. Wintertime is a little bit more difficult, but I mean, summertime is amazing because we have so many, like their strawberries are out of this world.
I remember. It was really good.
And you can get different size baskets too.
Yeah.
So like a small, even if you're a single person or just a couple, you can get a smaller basket.
So, Jennifer, do you like celery?
I'm hit and miss with celery. It depends what it's on or in.
Celery is a great vegetable when it comes to creating veggie stock, eating it with peanut butter, and it's a great snack to have as it's low in calories and simple and refreshing to eat. So grab some celery today at your local celery distributor, also known as a grocery store. Thank you, Celery, for sponsoring today's episode. I'd like to get on today's question, and that is, what do you think is a good kind of trigger to help people come into a vegan lifestyle or think about adopting one?
When you say trigger, you mean
anything?
How to encourage somebody, or a trigger that's happened to them?
Honestly, both. It could be either one.
Typically, a trigger. A lot of clients who I see, it's health related, or there is a huge issue with adrenal fatigue. And a lot of people, especially a lot of CrossFitters and just people in general who live a very active lifestyle, are noticing that they're tired all the time. So that's the first thing they notice about, cutting the refined sugars and cutting the gluten. There's a smaller percentage of people with celiac, but an even bigger percentage of people who have gluten sensitivity, which there's still no tests to actually test if a person is gluten sensitive, but the very fact that when somebody stops eating or consuming gluten, they feel better. I mean, that speaks volumes. So things like that. It also, I found, lifted the fog. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd have this sort of fog. But I think in terms of triggers, it's definitely people who are wanting to source more energy, to be more productive. And in terms of how I would suggest a more vegan lifestyle is lead by example. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, they're meat and potatoes type of people. And you'll notice that about that generation. And when they notice that somebody in their family who's close to them was living one way and always tired and not feeling well, and now they're just bouncing off the walls with all this energy, and their skin's brighter and they're in a better mood, then they want to know what you're doing. And that translates to everywhere in your life. Your friends want to know what you're doing. You can go to a regular type of restaurant with your friends and order a vegan style dish, and that becomes the conversation at the table, because chances are they're going to look at your food and want what you ordered over the same thing that they order time and time again. That's the trigger. That's what opens the conversation.
Interesting. Now, I'm curious, because we had this conversation on a podcast earlier. How is kind of friends now, going out to restaurants? Is it more difficult for you?
So I make my friends go to vegan restaurants. And it also, it opens that conversation. And luckily I have friends who I surround myself with who are very open to trying different things. That's not to say that I always suggest a vegan restaurant, but when I go to a non-vegan restaurant and I order a vegan style dish, my friends want what I ordered over what they typically order.
That's cool.
But yeah, I drag everyone to vegan restaurants.
Okay.
And I don't hold anything back. If you want to go for dinner with me, we're going to a plant-based vegan restaurant. Otherwise, it's not fun for me.
Yeah. I get it. That makes sense. Yeah.
It's the influence.
I know. I've been trying to push that on my friends as well. Trying to be like, listen, I don't have a choice in this restaurant. I don't want to go here.
Right. There's literally nothing on the menu. There are a few things you can do. I travel a lot, and I do a lot of, I go to a lot of events and a lot of conferences. And those in those circumstances, it's very hard when there's a buffet set out and it's a set menu, and you're looking at the buffet like, oh my god, there's nothing I can eat here. But little things like you can slip away, speak to the food and beverage manager. If you're at a restaurant, talk to the manager there. They want you to leave their restaurant happy, vegan or non-vegan. They don't care. If you leave unhappy, chances are you're going to tell somebody else or you're going to write a bad review. So they will literally do whatever they can to help you. And, I have a blog about how to order plant-based food in a steakhouse. It's very hard, but I actually got quite a nice dish. So,
really?
yeah,
That's
it was
awesome.
Yeah,
That's
they
great.
accommodated extremely well, which was like a beautiful gesture. And again, everyone at the table wanted what I was eating.
It is getting better though. I've noticed in the last even in the last year,
It's
I've noticed
blown up.
it's gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
Last year this time I was like, oh, I can go to Doomies again.
Yes.
And now I can
Mythology.
Now I can go to Mythology as well, or I can go to just there's like
Planta.
endless now almost restaurants.
Yeah.
And it's great.
It is. And I always say to people, I picked a perfect time to get diagnosed with endometriosis because had this have happened to me 5 years ago, I don't know what I would have done.
Right, yeah.
So, there are options, and that's only going to get broader, which is amazing.
And there are obviously a lot of resources online to switch to a plant-based whole food diet.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's great. Now, did you make your own recipes? Do you watch a lot of or read a lot of recipe books?
So at first I read a lot of recipe books. Pinterest is great for finding recipes. And then once you've sort of fine-tune your taste, you find the season. I use a lot of seasonings and a lot of I'll use lime and lemon. I don't use a lot of oil, if at all. So you definitely have to get to know your herbs and spices, and just play around. It's fun. You can't really mess up that much. Find what you like. You can put thyme on sweet potatoes and roast them for 40 minutes, and that's delicious.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I use a lot of turmeric. That's an
great.
anti-inflammatory powder, which is amazing. It's turmeric root, and so I use a lot of that, and I put that on into most of my recipes. I even put it in my smoothies.
Really?
Yeah. So there are a lot of resources. Now I just sort of go with. I have a foundation. So for instance, for dinners, I'll have either black beans, I'll have brown rice, brown basmati rice is actually really good, chickpeas, and then I build layers from the bottom up, and that's when I'll incorporate broccoli, Brussels sprouts, pea shoots, anything and everything, and then I put my seasoning on last.
Nice.
And I like to mix raw and cooked.
Okay. So you're not raw, you're both.
Right.
Okay.
So I roast veggies, but I also like to have, and it's it retains its nutrients when it's raw, obviously, and then you're actually chewing it, so you're digesting it a little better, and not to mention just the texture and taste is different from when you cook something. For instance, arugula has that nice bite to it, but I wouldn't necessarily sit there and eat a bowl of arugula. I would put that with a red potato, but a roasted red potato, and it's delicious together. Oh, yeah. So you kind of get that bite, that crunch, and then you get the softness and texture of the potato. It's great.
Now, I'm curious. Do you know anything about So I've had this conversation a lot with my sister, who has she has little kids. So do you know anything about how to
transition
feed little kids?
So there are many. I have 2 stepkids, 7 and 10, and so the tricky part is I have one very picky eater in any aspect. Unless it's chocolate, she doesn't want to eat it.
Yeah.
So allowing them to pick and choose. So what I do is I set up little bowls with say chopped up broccoli. I pre-cut everything, pre-chop everything, and I have them in little bowls. And we make Buddha bowls.
Okay.
So if it's fun for them and they have the opportunity to actually create their own meals, chances are they're going to eat it.
Right.
And I find if you keep things fairly plain in the beginning, then they're more likely to eat it as opposed to like putting a bunch of herbs and spices.
Right.
So plain, let them create, let them choose their own. Take them to the grocery store and let them, or like the market, the fruit market, and let them pick their own food because they feel like, they're almost empowered by it. So
now, I know a lot of kids are like this, and I was like this when I was a kid. How do you know any kind of ideas of how to get away from the chicken? Because chicken is like
chicken strips.
Yeah, it's like number one.
So we do like an unchicken strip.
Right. Okay.
So replacing the food that they are so used to with maybe the same spices and herbs. So like the crust, but using say like tofu or tempeh or something like that. Chickpeas is actually good too if you mix them up in the Vitamix and then coat them and sort of make them look like chicken fingers. So if they appear as though they're what they're used to eating, they may be more likely to eat it. Like, I mean, the sweet potato brownie, my stepkids love.
Yeah.
And they can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
And then it's small little sort of like choose your battle.
Yeah.
Right? Like it is going to be harder with kids because it's food and kids are very sort of picky no matter what.
Yeah, and they want whatever anyone else is having and
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay. Do you like cumin?
I do.
I'm sure you do.
Yes,
yeah.
I do. I use it a lot.
And it's great for you. We all know that.
Absolutely.
It can regulate digestion.
Yeah.
It boosts your immunity and is rich in iron. It can be used to help your skin. It can prevent diabetes and it can help to lower cholesterol. I think that's correct. That's what I Googled and that's what it said.
It's true.
Cumin seems to be a magical spice. So throw some of it into your next dish. And thank you, cumin, for sponsoring today's podcast. Now I was gonna have a taste test, but I wasn't sure. So, I'm kind of wondering, maybe could you take us through like a recipe that you really like, or something that's really easy for people? I don't know, something like that, maybe.
Something that's really easy, and if you like peanut, so this goes back to like maybe one of my favorite childhood snacks, which was peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm not eating bread anymore.
Yeah.
I could get gluten-free bread, but I find that there are a lot of additives and refined sugars hidden in the gluten-free bread. Not all, but some. So I just stay away from it in general. However, I make a chia seed pudding that is peanut butter and jelly.
Okay.
And I buy mini mason jars. So it's perfect for if you want to travel, if you're taking it to work, just to have it in the refrigerator. So like I put it in eyesight for the kids.
Yeah.
That's another thing for kids. If you pre-chop something, for instance, like if you just pre-chop some strawberries and put them in a bowl in the refrigerator within eyesight, chances are they will go for whatever they see first. So that's a tip for the kids. So I buy mini mason jars. I take the chia seeds. So I'll buy ground chia seeds because it's a smoother consistency. And I will mix a half a cup of chia seeds with 2 cups of coconut milk, unsweetened coconut milk. And let that sit in the refrigerator overnight. Now you have your pudding the next day. I puree blueberries or strawberries, depending on what you prefer, with a pitted date, and I layer that on top. And then on top of that, I put unsweetened almond butter or unsweetened organic peanut butter.
Awesome.
Yes.
So that sounds really
delicious, and it lasts for 5 days in your refrigerator.
Okay, that's good. That's for the whole week for me. So
you're good for the week.
That's amazing. Yeah, this part kind of I have to like think of something different to do. All right. Do you have like an inspiring story that other than yours? Because we've because yours is obviously great and we've heard it. But do you have any other ones that maybe are really interesting for people?
So, one of the amazing, one half of the Starch Queens, they also have a podcast and they're on Facebook, and they help people transition to the plant-based lifestyle. Is Nancy Matthews, and she was 120 pounds overweight. She had fatty liver syndrome. She had rosacea, acne, eczema, thyroid disease, and she reversed her fatty liver syndrome and went off of her thyroid meds, went off of her allergy meds, her asthma went away, all because she watched Forks Over Knives and decided to adopt this plant-based lifestyle, this vegan lifestyle, and really took hold of her health. And that was super inspiring to me. Somebody who had all of these health issues that you kind of feel like is on all of this medication. You kind of feel like, when you're in that place, how do you just change your entire life? And she did it all just by changing what she ate.
Yeah.
And it's just so empowering when you can actually do that and for your health. And that story really resonated with me because she changed the course of her life through what she was putting into her mouth.
Now I have a question. So you're plant-based for your health. What is your kind of view, or have you considered the other kind of versions of like veganism or plant-based, like for the environment, for the animals?
So yes, so that has evolved. So I will say, I'm going to admit this. Before going plant-based, I did not compost.
Okay.
I barely recycled. I didn't care about, that aspect of things. If anything, it was just a hindrance to me. And when I went plant-based, it opened my eyes to the environmental issues. I have 2 little dogs at home, and it's just like you look at them in a different way, and you look at meat in a different way. It gave me I became more sensitive about those types of issues as I became more aware of them. And really it's the knowledge that gives you sort of that different perspective on things, because when you understand on a fundamental level what actually happens to animals for humans to consume them, and what we're actually doing to the environment to grow that, or to produce that livestock for us to eat, and all the water that's being used, and like the gases, it makes you really understand on a fundamental level what your impact was. And it almost makes you upset a little bit that people are still living that way, but then you have to sort of reflect on, well, so were you at one point.
Yeah.
Right? And again, it's just leading by example. So educating people on that stuff, and making them become more aware of what they're actually doing to the environment, because it is not a sustainable environment. It's not, we're not going to have water for the rest of the rest of eternity, because it's just something that is not.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I see a lot is, or heard a lot before, was people are like, well, we can go organic, grass-fed. I'm like, yes. If you go organic or grass-fed, you have zero space. All of the grass in North America and South America, I think it's both, are gone just for livestock.
Yeah.
And people just don't think about that. They don't really understand that, like, the meat they're eating, and when they get McDonald's, all that kind of stuff, it's 100% not coming from there, because it's very unsustainable at that point. And even now, it's going to become unsustainable if we continue at the rate that we're going at.
Yeah, exactly.
So it makes me worried.
It makes me worried too.
Yeah, now it makes me very worried. Yeah. Okay. So today's last sponsor can be boiled, roasted, barbecued, sautéed, popped, and creamed. Of course, I'm talking about corn.
Yes.
Corn is a very tasty, sweet food that can be added to almost any dish. So go to your local grocery and grab some corn today. Thanks, Corn, for sponsoring today's episode. I think we're almost at the end, so I have a recipe for everyone. Is there anything you want to kind of say or preach?
So I will let the audience know that I do a lot of workshops in the city of Toronto and the surrounding area. And I have an upcoming workshop on Tuesday, July the 17th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., 355 Queen West, I believe. And it's all about unlocking your own plant-powered potential. So I'll go in and I will tell the attendees about my story and how it benefited my life, and also debunking certain plant-based nutritional paradigms. So when people ask, like, where am I going to get my vitamin B? What about protein? How about iron? So I'll go into a lot of like iron deficiencies and stuff like that, and then teach everyone how to unlock their own plant-based potential and get them started.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exciting. Maybe I should go to that.
Yes.
I don't eat the healthiest, I'm going to be honest. Okay, so today's recipe comes from allrecipes.com. It's for vegan black bean soup. Has no sugar.
Nice.
I made sure. 1 tablespoon of olive oil. You need a large onion. You need 1 stalk of celery, today's sponsor. You need 2 carrots, 4 cloves of garlic, 2 tablespoons of chili powder, 1 tablespoon of ground cumin, also today's sponsor, 1 pinch of black pepper, 4 cups of vegetable broth, 4 15-ounce cans of black beans. You can also get them dry. 1 15-ounce can of corn, also today's sponsor, and 1 14.5-ounce of canned crushed tomatoes. Super simple recipe. Heat the oil in a large pot over medium-high heat. Sauté the onion, celery, carrots, and garlic for 5 minutes. Season it with chili powder, cumin, and black pepper. Cook for a minute. Stir in the vegetable broth. Add the 2 cans of beans. Add the corn. Bring to a boil. And then in a food processor or blender, process the 2 cans of beans, the tomatoes until smooth, and then stir that all in and reduce the heat to medium and simmer for 15 minutes, and you're done. That's
Amazing.
It. Super simple. Love it. Simple recipes are the best. I'd like to thank today's sponsors, celery, cumin, and corn. I'd like to thank Jennifer and the listeners for being here with us today. You can find Jennifer on Instagram at plantbasedandhappy and at jenniferzee.com. ZEE.com. If you have a question, a suggestion, you want to be a sponsor, or you want to be on an episode, you can send us an email at veganambition@gmail.com. And thank you, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.
The podcast you just heard was published with Anchor. Got something you want to say to the creator of this show? Send them a voice message using the Anchor app, free for iOS and Android.